So I'm here to talk about this completely hidden gem that I discovered actually just a few months ago, so it wasn't even that long. And this is a film called Farmhouse, which was released in 2008, directed by George Bessudo. DVD says it came out in 2010, but released by VVS Films, and this stars Steven Weber, Kelly Hu, William Lee Scott, and Jamie Ann Allman, which are a bunch of TV and small film actors. And this is a horror film, completely throughout, and sinisterly dark. It was certainly one of the best discoveries I made this year, and I had such a blast with it. This is my second viewing of it. The first time I watched it, I really was drawn into the story, and I really liked the ending, and I really liked where it went. And this time around, it really earned its second viewing, and I definitely thought about it right after watching it for the first time, and I've always wanted to revisit it, and I thought it would make the perfect review. So this is going to be a absolutely full spoiler review. This film is very hard to talk about without spoiling, so I have a spoiler-free already video that I made that's up. But this one I'm going to be going really into detail because for everybody who's seen it, there's a lot to discuss with this one. So let's get started on that. The first thing I want to mention is the score that's used a lot throughout the film, but especially right at the beginning and right at the end. There's this extremely dark orchestral church music, basically funeral music, because the first scene obviously starts at a funeral, but the music pours you right into the film. I'm a huge fan of operatic orchestral music that's really slow and really heavy on the low octave strings and organ sounds. And when you mix that with operatic vocals in a really sinister and dark way, I just really love the sound of that. It's so atmospheric, and it really brings what the film is to play and really captures the moment in that sense. In the end, too. I mean, the ending scene is just so impactful, and then they play that music again in the background. It's too perfect. So they did a really good job on the music, and whoever was in charge of the score did a phenomenal job. So there's a lot to talk about this film in its biblical sense. This film is heavy on the biblical stuff. Now, I don't know how many people knew the twist going through the film. I didn't, and I liked that a lot. I thought this was going to be kind of a slasher, not home invasion, but a couple running away from, a psychotic slasher movie kind of thing. And as you get towards closer to the end, you start with the reveals and everything. It starts to become way more, and there's symbolism throughout. And I didn't know what was going on until the very end. Now, when it got to the part where the dead Samael and dead Lilith, the owners of the house, the couple who owned the farmhouse, came back after one was run over and the other one was stabbed through the temple, and things started to reveal from there. It really started to get going, and it started to pick up. But the thing is, when they got to the barn scene where Satan is revealed, and there's the huge twist where everything is either hell or purgatory, and they go in that direction, it really made my mind go, shit, I just wasted my time, because I hate films like that. I hate films that kind of try and trick you, but they don't utilize the tricking properly, and it just comes off as cheesy and corny and really stupid, and it's like you could have just kept going where you were going. You didn't have to go crazy with the dumb the twists, not the dumb twist, but the way they were revealed. And it was just like, it was a head slapping moment. Like, why did you do that? And then the last scene plays and the credit rolls, and I'm sitting there. This is my first time watching this, and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, okay, The whole film was perfect. Well, pretty close to perfect. And then that happened. I don't mind it. I didn't. I didn't mind it at all. I thought the film, as soon as I watched that scene, I was like, do I have to give this film away? And then I'm like, no, I don't, because the twist is great, it makes sense, everything connects, the dots connect perfectly, and there's so much lure and atmosphere and brutality in this film that makes it worth watching. And then, as I sat on it, I started to think of even more things that I'd never thought of before watching it for the first time. And then more things and more things, and I'm like, this film is actually really thought provoking and has a lot to say for playing by the numbers on its surface and then going into other crazy places. And I really enjoyed the hell out of it, and I love the fact that it stayed with me so long that it really asked for a second viewing. And all the things I thought about, after watching the film that came to my head that happened. Now, when the film is going through its play by numbers, like the character Alal is a great addition for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned. The characters that own the farmhouse, Samael and Lilith, and who he becomes later, obviously. But when they're bullying him, it's so brutal and so over the top, and it portrays these people as completely soulless psychopaths, really, before you know what's going on, actually. They're just so ruthless and just evil people. And like when in the dinner scene where he starts laughing at Alal having a hard time pronouncing his name, he's like, oh, like that is so mean and cold-hearted. Like I could just sense the uncomfortable feeling that Scarlett and Chad were having at the table, because I would feel the same way. I'd probably have to leave or say something. I don't know. Like, it'd be so awkward because they were just put in the most awkward situation there. And then it just another, like, the symbolism goes on. As I was thinking about this movie, I thought about the scene where Alal gives the apple to Scarlett and he asks her to eat it in sign language. That's a very Adam and Eve moment with the snake, with Alal being the snake and giving Eve the apple, kind of a temptation. And I did some research on the names Samael and Lilith and Alal because I knew they had something to do with biblical lore and biblical terminology. And Alal is the it's a mythological temptation demon that basically comes out of the underworld and can take many forms. And I am wondering if he can take the form of Satan as well. They reveal Satan at the end, but I'm wondering if Alal can take Satan's form and has taken Satan's form in Scarlett and Chad's life, because him coming as the doctor, and they reveal that the doctor delivering Scarlett's baby was Satan. They reveal that at the end, but it could have actually been Alal taking the form of Satan, because Alal is the demon of temptation, and he's known to take many forms and tempt men or tempt. They say he was a temptation for men, but I don't know if man means both sexes. But regardless, that makes sense in a biblical format. And I love horror that touches on biblical aspects. It's horrifying. It's intriguing. That's one of the biggest reasons why my favorite video game franchise of all time is Silent Hill, because they really threw a lot of biblical lore into the horror themes of that game and really made it a part of everything that was going on with it. So when they do the biblical lore mixed with the horror really well, and when you get a really good director doing it, I think it pretty much works wonders. Chad's character, the way that they utilize how much of a liar and a piece of shit he is. Wow, you despise this character at the end, and you're not. You can't sit there and have any mercy for these people and want them to have a second chance. Usually, you can find some kind of remorseful value in people, in characters like this, in stories like this, but with these people you can't. And Chad, at the dinner table, the scene where he's bluntly lying to Lilith when she asks him about, or when he mentions actually that they lost a child, and he's just making up this sob story when he knows clearly well that they didn't lose him, and he's just saying it with such, he's pretending to have pain in his heart and everything, and he's convincing if you have no idea about his history. But because there's so many people who are good at lying, this character really spoke. And there are people like that. There are people that just live off lying that convincingly. And it's crazy how they portray Chad and how much of a piece of shit they portrayed Chad. Both Scarlett and Chad were pieces of shit, but Chad takes the cake on that one. Great performance by him too. Now, here's another religious lore I was wondering throughout the whole film about Samael and Lilith. I was wondering if they were actually demons, because they were following a lot of rules that kind of avoided sin. Now, I wrote down that they made Chad and Scarlett sleep in separate beds. And I was wondering if that was because what they were. I asked myself, were they actually demons? Because demons wouldn't give a fuck. But it says a lot of, like, Samael is known to be an archangel of Hebrew and Judaism. Not Hebrew, Talmud and Judaism. So he's in Judaism lore, he's an archangel. I have it written down, I'll just read it. Samael, meaning in Hebrew, venom of God, poison of God, or blindness of God. So that's in Hebrew. And in Arabic, he's known as basically as another demon, archangel as well, known as the accuser, seducer, destroyer, and basically an archangel. So that's where I was wondering, maybe they're kind of like, is this purgatory, or are they straight from hell? Because the way they behave in certain ways could kind of speak that they are kind of more connected to God than just being, straight out of hell or from the underworld. And it was really intriguing. But then they start swearing, so that took that away. Like, I don't know, it's hard to... I did a lot of research on what their names meant, and that was really interesting, but it's hard to say exactly what they are and where they're from, whether it's the underworld or whether it's purgatory. Certainly not from heaven, but you know what I mean. That was really interesting. That's a piece of the film that I really liked, going with its biblical themes, with its horror elements. This film is brutal in the kills. Taking away the biblical story aside, this film is brutal with the kills, man. Psychologically brutal, too. Watching the characters scream in agony and what's said and what's done to them. So much psychological torture in that. The whole scene in the vineyard where... That's another thing. He owns a vineyard. Wine... Garden of Eden, grapes, and it's shit like that, like little pieces of that sprinkled throughout the film. I love. That's what keeps me thinking. But where was I? The vineyard scene where he's cutting Alal's eyes out, and then he cuts the one, and he's like, Alal being deaf, he makes him be able to read his lips. So he's like, it was her fault that your eyes cut out, and it's her fault that your second might come out as well. And it's her fault if I slit your throat. And then him murdering him, even though Scarlett came out like he was bribing her to. to save Alal's life. He kills him anyway. But Alal ends up being an immortal demon from the underworld who's a tempter anyway. So maybe he didn't feel any pain. Who knows? That's never explained. But do demons feel pain? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have no idea if they do. The thing with films though that have the best twists and the best things going on with the reveals, such as this one, the only downside is that they don't have much rewatch value when you know everything that's coming. Now, they're great for second and third watches to pick up on other things like I just said, but once you know once you know what's going to happen, the thrill kind of weakens in a sense, and it becomes a film that you want to show all your friends and you want to talk about, and you get like, oh my gosh, you got to see this, just go in blind, which I love going into films blind, and I had a phenomenal time. It's just too bad that the rewatch value diminishes, which doesn't mean that I never want to watch the movie again, but it's too bad that that's taken away from movies like this, because they're so strong in one side of things, and then there's that little unfortunate bit on the other side of it. And like I said, the ending was fine with me because of how good the film was throughout and the reveal. I just wish it looked better. And it deceived me because I literally thought the film was just gonna go stupid territory, like have one of the stupidest endings that it could possibly have, and it didn't. And when you see they actually show the mother killing her child, I can't imagine something more horrible to look at with that dark and sinister music in the background. Like I said, these characters are just so evil that they deserve their fate. And the director did what he could, but he could have played with this scene better. I don't know if he could, though. Maybe the budget wasn't there. I mean, it is a low budget film, but the budget was spent pretty good throughout the rest of the film. The gore is fantastic. Everything is fantastic. And I guess it just gets a little bit cartoony at the end. Maybe that's why I was deceived by it. But because of the story being so strong and so emotional, that can be forgiven, basically. Simple as that, really. The devil in the church I understood way better this time around. He mentions always being in Scarlett's ear, talking about he knows where her father is, and he says, I know where your father is, and if you want, I can take him to you. And you can take that two ways. He knows where her father is in hell because he was abusing her. But he also knows where her father is, meaning God or Jesus. And he can also take her to him if she's good. Because the mother puts the rosaries in her hand and says, keep these on you at all times, they'll protect you. And she does, and then the devil comes for the first time, whispering in her ear, tempting her, as well as in the hospital, as well as in the bedroom, after this whole incident with the money scandal goes on. And he's always tempting her, even as portraying the doctor. And that's why I was wondering if the doctor is Alal, being that Alal is the demon known as the tempter, or if it was actually Satan himself. It could have been either. And it doesn't really matter. I'm just going by what these names mean according to my research, because when a film is this good and when a film is this symbolic, I kind of have to go research it a bit. So that's all my points, and I got through them all, and that's all I have to mention about the film. I can't praise it enough. I mean, I had a blast with this film. If anybody else has fan theories, knock yourself out and tell me. This is one hell of a horror film. I really hope you've watched this movie before watching this spoiler review, because I mentioned already that there is a spoiler-free review, so you can go watch that. Because this is a film you don't want spoiled for you. It is awesome. This is one of the best gems I found. I found it for really cheap, and I just bought it blind, and that's what I love. I love finding films I've never heard of that look cool, that sound cool, and that are good, because sometimes I'll find a film for $3 and it's a shit turd. And then you discover things like this that you would have never heard of otherwise until you randomly stream a YouTube video on a person's entire film collection, and they mention something and they mention a little blurb on it, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna put that on the list. Ooh, I found it for $3.99. Wow, I'm gonna pick that up, and then it ends up being fucking amazing. So, Farmhouse. It's directed by George Bessudo. You should know already of 2008 film by VVS Films, and I really loved it, and I really like talking about it. So that's all I got for now. Until next time, thanks for watching. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like my reviews, and I will see you next time. Cheers.